All right, let's dive into a really sharp piece of satire from the legendary HARISHANKAR Parsai. This comes from his book, Nithale Ki Diary, and it poses a really tough question. What happens when a system is so completely broken that just being a good person actually makes you look like the bad guy? So the story kicks off with this completely wild confession. The narrator just casually tells us that his good friend, Ram Singh, shows up every single day just to yell insults at him. He's not kidding. Ram Singh even practices planting fake evidence on him and then arresting him. It sounds nuts, right? I mean, who would do that? But this bizarre ritual, it's actually a kind of training program. And to really get why an honest-to-goodness police inspector would need to practice being corrupt and abusive, we have to rewind his very first day on the job. Okay, so meet Ram Singh. When he first puts on that uniform, he is everything you'd want in an officer. He's idealistic, totally honest, and he genuinely wants to serve the public. He believes in the law and his duty to protect people. He gets his first case, a robbery out in a village. Ram Singh gets there, ready to do things by the book. He sees the victim, an old man looking totally defeated, and he walks up to him with nothing but respect, really wanting to find who did this. Now, you'd think, okay, these are all the right moves. He's being respectful, he's professional, he's refusing bribes. But this is the genius of the story. Every single one of these good, decent actions is about to completely blow up in his face. Instead of feeling relieved, the villagers are just baffled. You can just picture them looking at each other, whispering. They've never seen an inspector act like this. His politeness is so out of place that it actually makes him seem suspicious. This whole encounter just keeps building to this really shocking conclusion. See, Ram Singh thinks he's earning their trust, but what he's actually doing is convincing them that he's a fraud. And this, right here, is the core of the whole problem. Ram Singh is playing by one set of rules, the official ones, the ones based on ethics. But the villagers? They're playing by a totally different rulebook, one they learned from years and years of dealing with a corrupt system. I mean, just look at this disconnect. It's night and day. Where Ram Singh offers respect, they expect it to be screamed at. Where he promises to find the thief, they expect it to be blamed for bothering the police. His decency just doesn't make any sense in their world. Finally, the old man just says it out loud. He tells Ram Singh to his face that he can't possibly be a real cop. Why? Because he's too nice. His virtue isn't seen as a strength, it's seen as a trick, a clever disguise. And then, in this moment of just pure, absurd irony, the villagers decide to act. They grab Ram Singh, the guy who came to help them, and they tie him up with a rope, convinced he's a criminal in a stolen uniform. And then they send for the real police. So how on earth did we get here? Well, to get it, you have to understand the completely backwards logic of this broken system. It's a world where corruption has become so normal, so expected, that it's created its own set of rules. And sure enough, later on, another inspector shows up. And what's the very first thing he does? He starts screaming insults at the poor old man. That abusive tone, that aggression, that's exactly what the villagers were waiting for. And the old man's reaction is the satirical punchline of the whole story. He's actually happy. He points to the screaming officer and basically says, "See, that's a real cop." For him, the abuse isn't an insult, it's comforting. It's a sign that things are back to normal. And for Ram Singh, tied up and humiliated, this is a huge wake-up call. He realizes the police academy taught him the law, but it never taught him the reality on the ground. To be seen as legitimate, to even do his job, he has to learn how to perform being corrupt. Now, this story, it's so much more than just a funny, sad story about one guy. Parsai is giving us this incredibly powerful warning about how broken systems can totally warp our idea of what's normal and what's not. There's actually a term for what Parsai is describing. Sociologists call it systemic normalization. It's basically when the bad stuff, the unethical behavior, becomes so common that it just becomes the standard. The broken rules become more real than the actual rules. And this is where it gets really uncomfortable, because it forces us to look in the mirror and ask, where do we see this in our own lives? How often do we just accept that things are broken? In politics, at work, wherever, and just say, well, that's just the way things are. You see these echoes everywhere, don't you? It's when we automatically assume a politician has a hidden agenda, or when we get suspicious of a coworker who's just being genuinely nice, because we're waiting for the other shoe to drop. Like the villagers, we've been trained to expect the worst. And this brings us to the really deep philosophical heart of Parsai's satire. The first tragedy, the honest guy getting tied up, that's bad, for sure. But it's not the deepest tragedy here. The real tragedy is his solution. Instead of trying to fix the system or fight it, he decides he has to become part of the problem to survive. That's why he's at his friend's house every night, practicing how to be a monster. He is literally unlearning his own goodness just to fit in. And that's the question Parsai leaves us with. And it's a heavy one. When we're faced with a system that punishes integrity and rewards the opposite, what part of our own ideals, what part of our own inner Ram Singh do we choose to sacrifice just to get by?